Hey guys, welcome. Wanted to do a quick video, and when I say quick, I mean I hope this doesn't take more than 15 minutes because to some people this may be a very dry video. To some people it may not be. And it really just has to do with things that are going on right now in the national media, and there's just a lot of information that I keep hearing that is 100% false. And I know some people are going to find this video a little odd because it's going to sound like I'm defending President Biden in this video. But I have always believed that it is very important to provide accurate information, regardless of the political stance. And so, for those of you that aren't aware, right now, there's a lot of criticism against President Biden and President Trump, depending on what side of the aisle you're on, regarding the possession of classified documents at their personal residences. And so first, what I wanted to say is kind of a quick overview of what is classified information. And I guess I should start with, who the hell are you, CJ, to talk to me about classified information? Well, y'all might know, if you've known me for a long time or you follow this channel for a long time, that I spent a career in military intelligence. That's an oxymoron. But I went into counterintelligence and finished out my career and most of my career as a counterintelligence special agent. And our main purpose was to protect classified information. So that's what I did. Classified information was my daily job. The answer, Bo to Bob, did I ever take classified document home? No, absolutely not. And I'm going to explain all of this, kind of the processes of how classified information works. I'm not going to give you any classified information in this video. I'm not going to talk about things I'm not allowed to talk about. I'm just going to talk about what is classified information and really what authorities do the vice president and the president have? Why in the world would they have classified information at their homes, etc. So there are three types of classified information you should know about. There is confidential, secret, and top secret. Now within that, or I guess at addition to that, there's something called SCI, or sensitive compartmented information. And so stuff can be top secret, and it can also be top secret SCI, which means that it's top secret or secret, but with the SCI label at the end of it, that means that only certain people with particular clearances can have access to that type of information. It's sensitive and it's compartmented, which means, if only people have access to this compartment of information can have access to these types of documents. You can have access to this type of SCI material, this type of SCI material, and this type of SCI material. And just because you have access to this SCI doesn't mean you're going to have access to these other compartmented information, documents and stuff like that. So I don't know why I'm out of sync. It doesn't matter. So as a counterintelligence agent, obviously I held a top secret SCI clearance. And in order for me to be able to get access to particular information, the reason I had an SCI was because as a counterintelligence agent, I had to at least have the possibility of accessing and at least be trusted to access information, regardless of what program it was in case there was a breach or espionage or anything like that, and we had to investigate it. However, I didn't just get to have access to that. I had to have what's called a need to know. So just having a clearance doesn't mean you can just look at classified documents. You have to have a need to know that particular classified information in order to access it. If you're still having out of sync issues, just maybe refresh your screen or something. And so whenever I needed to get access to that information, I would have to be, quote, read on to that particular program if I wasn't already read on to it. And then when you left a job or you left a duty station where that program you were no longer going to have access to, you had to be read off to the program. In other words, it's a way to make you aware of what you can and can't talk about and all that kind of stuff. So you get read on to programs, you get read off to programs. Once you're read off to a program, or if you're never read on to a program, you cannot have access to that information. And again, it doesn't matter your level of clearance that you have. If you don't have a need to know that information, you don't get access to it. Okay. I can't just go and say, hey, I want to see all the nuclear secrets when my job is mostly in foreign espionage. Okay. That's not how it works. So there's what classified information is. Now, what is the difference between the three? Classified information is information that would in some way damage national security. And so confidential information is information that if it was put in the wrong hands of somebody or somebody that wasn't authorized would in some way damage national security. It's one of the lowest levels of damage. Maybe it's just an embarrassment or it doesn't necessarily expose sources and methods and things like that. Then you have secret information. Secret information is information that would not just damage, but it would, well, first of all, it requires a substantial degree of protection, and it would seriously damage national security. So you've got damage national security confidential level, serious damage to national security at the secret level, and then you would have what's called exceptionally grave damage, which is what top secret information is. And top secret information has to have, it says it has to have the highest level of protection is what top secret is. But really it is the highest of those three. But if you have SCI, it's even higher. Your level of protection for SCI material is even higher than just top secret material. So in some cases, secret SCI has to be protected even more than regular, just top secret information. All right. So that's what classified information is. What I want to talk about is more specific to this current ongoing controversy within Biden and Trump. And here's what I'm going to say right off the get-go. I know from experience that our government overclassifies way too much. Okay. There used to be punishment for overclassification because when something gets classified, it's taken out of the sphere of public information that the public can't know about it, right? And all too often in our government and all levels of government, whether it's the DOD, and my level of experience comes specifically from the DOD and my interactions with other three-letter agencies, CIA, FBI, DEA, things like that. But I'm not going to be talking about sensitive stuff. I'm talking generally. And so where was I going with that? Anyway, so when you've got this classified information, the problem is that the government overclassifies so much. And there are things that you read and you're like, why is this even classified? This is public knowledge or whatever. So that being said, first of all, when you hear that Trump or Biden had classified materials that were classified, top secret SCI or whatever, yes, that's very important that this kind of information be protected, because especially if it's top secret SCI, that would cause grave damage, seriously grave damage to national security should that information get out there. So I'm going to go down two paths. The first path is what's probably going to sound like I'm giving excuses, but I'm going to show you that what I'm talking about is the law. I'm also going to show you that the media is lying to you. The media is misleading you. And all you have to do is do some research. I lived in this field, so I know the EOs and I know that the Army regulations and the DOD directives and all that kind of stuff that relate to classified information, because as a foot soldier in the classified world, if I mishandle, there are two ways to get fired as an intelligence official, at least in the military. One is you mishandle classified information. And the second is that you expose in any way a confidential informant or a source. Okay. Those two things, you get your badge taken and your security clearance yanked right away in the military. Now, it's obviously different when you're a president or you're some kind of high ranking official, like maybe a general or a department head or something like that. Maybe it's a little bit more different. But I know that soldiers have gone to jail for much less than what we're seeing in the media right now with regards to what happened at Mar-a-Lago with Trump and what happened at these locations for Biden. Now, what I want to show you here is, I want to bring this up. I'm going to do it this way. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history here. This is the executive order from Nixon. And this was back in 1972, I believe, one of the earlier, I guess, executive orders on this topic. But really, it's a modern historical thing right here. And so, if you look, it talks about the authority to classify. Now, anybody is not just allowed to say, you know what, I think this should be secret. We have what's called original classification authorities. Those are people who determine, okay, what is it that is going to be classified? And the president determines who is an original classification authority, or an OCA. Okay, so I'm going to use the word OCA, so I don't have to keep saying that over and over again. The OCA is a person who determines what's going to be classified. So, for example, the head of the DOD might say that our war plans prior to going to war are going to be treated as top secret, confidential, whatever. A particular operation to get bin Laden might be top secret, or confidential. And even within that, it might be top secret SCI, meaning, you know what, for example, the bin Laden raid, when they got bin Laden, was an SCI operation. So it was top secret, and it was sensitive compartmented information strictly to those who had a need to know to engage in that particular operation up until it happened. Okay, so I don't know if it was the president that decided that, or if it was the DOD, but it was probably the DOD in cooperation with the president that said, we're going to do this SCI type operation. So the authority to classify here is strictly limited to those offices within the executive branch, and the authority to classify information top secret is by such officials as the president may designate in writing. So again, the president is the original classification authority, but he can delegate to others. And of course, down here, I'm not going to go through all of this, but you've got, here are some of these other agencies that the president has said, okay, CIA, you're able to determine, what classification particular information is going to be. The Atomic Energy Agency, the state, Treasury, Defense, Army, Navy, Air Force, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Now, moving forward to the Reagan era, you had, so here, this is the Reagan era executive order. This is 12356 and classification authority. So to designate classified information, top secret, is only by the president. So only the president is the original classification authority as of 1982. This is a 1982 executive order. Again, you can look this up, 12356, executive order 12356. Now, if you look at this little footnote, there's a footnote because there's some extra information down here that Reagan added down here. And the president issued an order of designation, okay, which reads, pursuant to section 1.2, which we just looked at, I hereby designate the following officials to classify information. And if you look, the vice president is one of those people that was delegated to. So as of 1982, even the vice president was an original classification authority, an OCA. Now, this, of course, you'd have to go down to, and this is where I think a lot of the media and a lot of people that are talking about this issue right now have gotten it wrong, because if you go back up to section 1.2 of this executive order, it only says the president. And the problem is a lot of people have only read this and like, oh, well, heck, Biden isn't even allowed to have that because he can't declassify anything because he's not an OCA. And if you're not an OCA, if you can't classify something, you can't declassify something, or at least there's a process. If I wanted something declassified as a foot soldier, as a first sergeant, or as a sergeant, or whatever, there is a process that I would have to go through because I'm not an OCA. But the president could just say, I hereby declare this is unclassified. And anyone that's an OCA of that particular information can determine that that information is declassified. But if you go down here, the president also, in this exact same executive order, designated the vice president, okay? And that wasn't rescinded. There was no rescission from 1982 to president. But President Obama released his executive order which was 13526, which is interesting because 13526 and this one was 12356. So they can be confused. 13526 is Obama, 12536 is, I'm sorry, was Reagan. So when you go down to the original classification here in 1.3, you see that Obama sort of demystified what it was. And as of 2009, when this executive order was released, the authority to classify information originally was allowed to be classified by the vice president. So what I'm trying to say here is the criticism should be no different between Biden and President Trump, because President Biden had just as much OCA authority. I'm using it's not redundant because authority as a noun, they're different types of nouns. Anyway, so as the original classification authority, the vice president was able to declassify information as an OCA, just as Trump was able to declassify information as an OCA. So when you hear these talking heads in the media that are talking about the fact that, oh, this is different because Vice President Biden he's not allowed to declassify information. Yes, he actually is, as an OCA. You can go down and read in these as well what the declassification procedures are, but those declassification procedures are for right here. The official who authorized the original classification is allowed to just declassify it. Now, or his successor is allowed to just declassify it. Okay. Other than that, there's a process for downgrading information from TS, or like from TS-SCI to just TS, or from TS to secret, or secret to confidential, or any of those to unclassified, completely unclassified. But the president has, and the vice president has, as of 2009, and Trump never fixed this. Trump did not create an extra executive order that in any way altered this executive order. So as I showed you before, you had the Nixon executive order. And by the way, prior to the Nixon executive order, there were 24 or 26 agencies that were allowed to classify information. I think, you had like the IRS in there. You had all these different agencies that were original classification authorities. Nixon dropped that down to just 12. And then Reagan clarified it a little bit more. And then, of course, Obama changed it a little bit more. But as you see, there's a lot more, or there are a lot more classification authorities today than there used to be. Because if you look, there's not really a list. It just says agency heads and officials designated by the president. So if you're an agency head of any agency under the Obama executive order, you can classify information. And this is why, as I said at the beginning of this video, information now is not classified because it would present some sort of danger to national security. It's classified because they want to hide it from the public. That's really why a lot of information is classified today. And if you look at all of these executive orders right here, it talks about what is classified information. So as I mentioned early on, confidential information would cause damage. Secret information would cause serious damage. Top secret information would cause exceptionally grave damage to national security. But the intent behind all of this was that the information absolutely was related to national security. The problem now is, and since 2009 and probably earlier, is when you've got every agency head that's allowed to classify information, what kind of national security is the IRS engaged in? What kind of national security is the ATF engaged in? What kind of national security is the Department of Interior engaged in? And yet they're allowed to classify information. And what's happening is it's no longer about what causes damage to national security. It's more about what's going to cause damage to the administration. And I'm talking about both Republican and Democrat administrations. Now, why would a president or a vice president have classified information in their private homes? Now, before I even say that, let me say that is absolutely allowed. Just because you're the president or the vice president, and just because you are allowed to take home or take to your home office classified information, doesn't mean that they are allowed to willy-nilly just ignore the rules about how to safeguard that classified information. What happens is there are special teams. As a matter of fact, I had anticipated or considered applying for the CI team that works in the White House, that works on presidential documents and things like that, and providing counterintelligence support to the White House. And I decided I didn't want to apply to that because I just didn't want to have to deal with more of the politics of information. I wanted to stick to black and white letter stuff. But there are teams that when a president comes into office, they help to set up what's called a SCIF, a sensitive compartmented information facility. And that is a facility that handles sensitive compartmented information, SCI, right? Or make sure that if the president is going to have classified information at a location other than a secure facility, that something is set up at their home. And generally these teams will go out and help set up this secure facility or room or closet or whatever it might be, so that those individuals can have that classified information in their homes. Generals do this as well. Obviously, as the heads of agencies are allowed to have information at their homes if they're the OCA. And again, they have SCIFs set up, or at least storage places where that information can be protected. And so that happened at Mar-a-Lago. Mar-a-Lago, they helped set up a SCIF. There was a SCIF in Trump's house. I guarantee you there's probably one somewhere on Biden's property somewhere, but I bet you it's not the garage. I bet you it's not right next to a Corvette. At least as if I were the CI agent in charge of that, I wouldn't be approving that. Hang on a second. I can turn this off here. There we go. And so the next question, so why would they have that stuff in their home? Now that we know that they can, like me as a foot soldier, is it possible that I could take classified information home? It's possible, but it's highly unlikely. I'm talking like 99.9% unlikely that I would be able to have a SCIF or a secure area set up at my home, even if I were working in a special missions unit or something like that. But the presidents do get those. So why would they? So now that we know, and I'm telling you that it's lawful to do that, why would they do that? Well, as you know, presidents and vice presidents, generally, there are some exceptions, but they're not very smart people. These are people who have no skills to offer society. They've never contributed anything to society or to America. They've never built anything. They've never employed anybody. These are people whose only talent is to talk and have an opinion on things. And those people we call presidents and vice presidents and so on. And so when they get out of office, what do they have to offer society? Nothing. These people have nothing to offer society. They don't know how to produce things. The only people that they've employed have been on the taxpayer's dollar, and they haven't had to worry about payrolls, because if they can't meet payroll, they just tax you more. They just steal more of your money. And so the only way that these type of people who are highly educated but not very smart are able to make money when they leave office is by writing books, memoirs, autobiographies, biographies, giving speeches, writing, op-eds and things like that. Maybe doing commercials about taking a vaccine later. Those are the kinds of things that presidents and vice presidents who leave office, that's the only thing they're good for. So they have to write books. And when you think about what a president or a vice president does, a lot of times the staff does all the work and they figure out what needs to be done. And then they go to the president or the vice president to figure out or to get approval for something they want to do. And the president's involvement is generally very minimal. He might ask some questions about things, but generally his involvement is very minimal. It's either a yes, go, no, don't go, or let me see this or let me see that. And so when they go to write their memoirs, when they leave office, they need access to the documents and the records from their presidency. And the Presidential Records Act allows them to have access to this information for periods of time, and that can be extended as well. You know, you just ask for permission to extend those times. I think it's like 2 to 4 years. I'd have to look that up again. That's why they're able to have that classified information, and that's why they kind of should, but it's still supposed to be protected. So the fact that there are documents in several different places that anybody can have access to, and you know, Biden says that it was locked up in my garage. I don't know about you guys, but how many people's garages are like bunkers? Not very many. And so this idea that just because it was locked in your garage that it was secure, sorry, that's not how, especially top secret SCI information is maintained and stored. You know, if you looked and remembered what I highlighted earlier, top secret information has the highest level of storage out there. And he's got TSSCI right next to his Corvette. And by the way, I guarantee you that the door is not locked coming from the house into the garage. Now, it's probably locked going from the garage into the house. You know, it's easy to lock the door from the inside because you want to keep people out of the house, but no one keeps people out of the garage necessarily. How many foreigners and people without classified security clearances have been in Biden's house? How many of his staff that clean his house or answer his phone or making his dinner or whatever, how many of them had TSSCI clearances? How many of the people that Biden had over for dinner or for special functions or for Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever, how many of those people had top secret SCI clearances? Because they had access to that garage. Just because it's locked from the outside doesn't mean it's not locked from the inside. So the whole purpose of this video, and I'm going to keep this under 30 minutes because we're at 28 right now, is that there are questions to be asked, but we need to ask them with the correct context. And the correct context is Biden was allowed to have classified information, is allowed to have classified information as the vice president. The vice president, according to executive orders that go back decades, 50 years or more, give the vice president OCA to classify and unclassified documents. Vice President Biden had just as much authority to do so as President Trump did. So we are comparing apples and apples, although it may be Granny Smith apples versus sweet red apples, you know, whatever. But they're still apples and apples, even though there are different things. The FBI did go to Mar-a-Lago and did help set up the skiff down there. I don't know where all the documents were down there. I'm not going to say one's better or worse than the other. I just think that everybody should have the right information about how classified information should be cared for and correct the record that Biden is different because he was only vice president. Okay. And I showed you throughout this video the actual authorities, the actual language of the law that allows the vice president to have OCA, to classify and declassify information. All right, guys, thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure that I am completely unbiased on this issue. I do think that there is a problem with the protection of classified information because if you have SCI material just laying around, that can hurt a lot of people. SCI material is some of the most highly protected material out there, and it's just sitting in a locked garage. I mean, when you walk into a skiff, you know, when I was in the military, and I had access to classified information, I would walk into a skiff, a sensitive compartment information facility. Just because you're in a skiff doesn't mean you're going to walk in there and you're going to see classified documents lying all around. Even in a skiff, you have to protect that classified information because there may be people in the skiff that have SCI but are only read on to some programs that you're not read onto, or vice versa. And so you need to make sure that only the people that have access to that particular information are able to access that information. So even if you're in a SCIF and you leave a document on your desk and then you walk away without securing that document, that's a violation right there. Even though you're in a secured or a sensitive compartmented information facility, even though you're in there in a SCIF, it doesn't mean you can just leave stuff lying around that everybody inside that room or that building has access to the kind of information that you're working on. All right. Yes. Locked rooms within locked rooms within locked rooms. Absolutely. And those rooms were soundproof. They had no windows. You had to go through 2 doors, at least in my SCIFs. You always had to go through 2 doors because there was a buffer between the doors. You walked into the main door, and then there's like, I guess, a place where we put all of our, you weren't allowed to have your cell phones anywhere in the SCIF, but like if you had other things like bags or whatever, you had to leave those in the space between the 2 doors. And so you literally only walked in with maybe a notepad, any documents you had, or if you had a thumb drive. And of course, the thumb drive had to be scanned and it had to be marked on the thumb drive what type of information it was on. You had to make sure that you didn't put a top secret thumb drive into a secret computer. Obviously, it's okay to put a secret thumb drive into a top secret computer, but once you did that, that thumb drive becomes top secret and you can't put it back into a secret computer. So there's all kinds of different rules that relate to that. And what I'm finding out is that our presidents don't treat classified information with the same importance and enthusiasm and zeal and protectionism as those of us are held to, the standard that those of us are held to at the base level, the people who are producing that information, who are creating that information based on the OCA. All right, guys. I hope that wasn't too boring for you. I find this stuff kind of interesting, but I also spent a career doing it and working in it. But I really just wanted to make sure we get the right information out there. So like and share this video, let people know, at least if you're going to argue about whether or not Biden can have documents in his, at his house because he's only vice president, at least now you know that that was okay as vice president. He still was supposed to store that information in a way that nobody could get access to it. And it appears, at least based on what's being told right now, that was not the case. So y'all take care, be safe, be free, and I'll see you next time there's something interesting I feel like I want to talk about.